Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Wednesday night, the 9th of December, 2020. And of course, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, just north of the Southern State Parkway, 631-756-1125. The website is omnitruevalue.com. They have everything you need to get you through this winter when it comes to winter storms and winter storm cleanups, from Omni Melt to Petalo calcium chloride pellets and Mag ice pellets and flakes, along with shovels, spreaders, snow blowers, even generators. Heaven forbid we should get into a storm that knocks out power around here. So be sure to check them out. OmniTrueValue.com, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. And Mr. Rayo is not giving a talk tonight, so he is right here. I'm in flannel, but you are not.
Actually, I did give a talk tonight, Joe, for the folks at the library in Wurtsboro up in Sullivan County.
Oh, you're getting
That was
around.
that was at 6 o'clock tonight. So I was done a little while ago and didn't bother to change. Otherwise, if I was attired the way I was before, tie and jacket, I said no, nothing. You want me to wear my
Well, you
t-shirt?
look sharp.
You don't want me to wear my t-shirt.
A couple of announcements before we get started tonight. First off, no, you don't want to wear your T-shirt.
Oh,
No, don't wear your T-shirt. I don't have
oh,
a problem with it, but since the executive producer upstairs in your house
yes,
has an issue, and it might, have ramifications in the long range. So let's
yes,
put it that way.
yes.
Just a couple of announcements. Of course, Joe's been talking about the Geminids with the meteor shower, and Friday night on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, he will be doing what he would normally be doing, his library check, is he's going to do it here instead. So that's a good thing. Also, tomorrow night, after the Joe and Joe Weather Show is done, for members of my weather platform on Patreon, there will be a weather Zoom, which we've been trying to do once a week. So this week it will be Thursday night, roughly at 9 o'clock. So once the Joe and Joe show is done, I'll put the links up for you on the website, and you can jump in on the weather Zoom. And there's a link pinned to the top of our chat board tonight in case you're interested and you want to subscribe to my weather platform on Patreon. It's just $2 a month. And you get all sorts of extra weather stuff with that too. Videos, message me anytime, etc., etc. So that's the pinned link that is on the top of the screen. Now, I will tell you, Mr. Rayo, after doing a careful examination of a number of model runs, I've come to a couple of conclusions. One is, oh, and by the way, I want to correct something I said last night, because I mentioned to David Schwartz, who's one of our regulars. He had messaged me about uh, Dr. Judah Cohen's blog, and I made the mistaken assumption that Dr. Cohen had thrown a towel in for the winter, and then I went to start reading it, and I ran out of time, but I read enough of it to realize that I misinterpreted everything. That is indeed not the case. So just want to correct that. Okay. So make sure we got the facts straight. And on that subject matter, Mr. Rayo, as I've been looking through ensembles and general models and so on, I have to tell you, if you're a winter weather lover here, you can. I think you could start to be a little encouraged. Let's call it a gentle encouragement, a cautious encouragement. But if you are thinking along the lines of cold and snowy weather, uh, the ensembles to me, and a few other things that I looked at, including the teleconnections, which we're going to show, I think are becoming a little more encouraging for that possibility in the longer range.
Did I didn't get a chance to look, but did Central Park record a trace of snow today? I guess they did. Everybody had,
I'm sure they did. They said that it was snowing moderately in Midtown for a short time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I basically I can count the flakes on my hand, the number that I saw. But a few places did see some of the white stuff go by today with those snow showers. But I'm liking what I'm seeing more today than I have in a while. And I think
I,
that for the winter weather lovers, we could take a little bit of cautious encouragement down the road.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've already seen people already throwing in the towel and
Oh, let
saying,
them throw in the towel. That's silly. That's just silly nonsense. They do it
"Well,
out of when people when I see comments uh, when I see comments that along those lines, or when you're talking about a storm where the rain snow line is at an issue, and you get these people that just reflexively put stuff up saying it's just going to rain. They just do that out of sheer emotion. They're not coming from any kind of forecasting angle. So I just ignore them.
as well you should."
Yeah, it's a waste of my
Uh,
time.
I looked at the CPC and Climate Prediction Center, and they've got us still teetering on near or above normal. In fact, they go whole hog above normal once we get past the 17th of the month.
Right.
But that's, that's as what you're talking about is not confined to just, the next couple of weeks in December. You're talking about the broad. You're looking at the broader picture, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about the fact that all of a sudden it's going to be below normal temperatures forever and ever, Arctic air pouring in, snowstorm after snowstorm. I'm certainly not saying that at all. And I think it could very well at times certainly be above normal. But I'm seeing at least some things going on that suggest that, much like what we usually have to look at in the beginning of the winter, even in the best of patterns, the opportunity that maybe a window is going to open up. I think we had a window really this weekend, and how it turned out was for New England, and not that far away either, down in Connecticut's southern New England and points northward, getting accumulating snow. I think we could see these sort of windows open up, and depending on the timing of the northern jet stream, the southern part of the jet stream, this split flow that we seem to have, depending on how they time out, something could happen. I don't have my finger on anything specific, but I think the possibility is there. We certainly don't have a big ridge in the east. That's the thing. I mean, if we had a flying big ridge in the east, that's a different story. But we don't have that. We have enough. There's enough there to suggest to me that um, there may be a shot in the next few weeks.
Well, I touched upon this yesterday in the winter of 82, 83, an El Nino year. There were numerous cases where we had one storm after another storm after another storm, and the same thing. Why can't it be cold enough for snow? Why can't it be this? Why can't it do that? Because the cold air just was not there when we were visited by these disturbances. But then, come mid-February, there was a nice little batch of cold air, a nice little outbreak, which was coming on down across the Northeast the same time that one of these storms was coming up from the south, and boom, we had the famous megalopolitan storm, 1 to 2 feet. And the ironic thing about that, Joe, I remember in the aftermath, as we went into March and April and May, and I was asking people, "So, what'd you think of the winter?" And really, overall, it was one of the warmer winters of recent years, recent decades, and we really didn't have all that much snow overall, except for that one big storm in mid-February, and everybody was saying the same thing. Oh, it was a terrible winter. Oh, all that snow, all that. I hate
Right.
snow, and really, one storm colored or biased everybody's opinion about the winter season, and it may turn out something like this year.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, it may very well. I mean, look, none of us really know how it's all going to turn out. We can only we can only play with these things and deal with these things one storm at a time, which is kind of how I've always approached this. I look at the pattern. I try to figure out where is it going in the next week or two. That's really about that's the extent of my mindset. I can't really. I'm not good at going beyond that. I try to imagine what it might look like, but I'm not. I'm just not good at. Some people are. I'm not. That's not my thing.
Okay.
I want to just acknowledge Scott Briller, David Schwartz, and William Uber, early super chat hitters tonight. Thank you so much. We already have 38 likes, which is great. So if you like what you see, uh, on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, hit the like button. We really do appreciate you doing that. So, why don't we start off with some of the things that I'm talking about here? And I'm going to go first to the teleconnections. And yeah, we might need the Omni Melt and the Petalo and the Mag Ice pellets and flakes from omni-true value hardware, but not tonight, and certainly not from the snow showers today. But let's look at the let's look at the teleconnections. And what is interesting to me, Joe, is, and I looked at the ensembles and look at the operational runs of all the models, and the NAO is the North Atlantic Oscillation. Higher pressures up in the North Atlantic, lower pressures in the mid latitudes in the Atlantic is negative. It actually went negative at the beginning of the month, and it's going to be moderately negative to if some of the members, each one of those red lines represents an ensemble member of the the GFS ensemble, the GEFs, and you've got some of them that are showing very strong negative values after the 16th. Now, there's a couple of them that trend up to the neutral line, but there's a fair amount that are either negative or even strongly negative, and that is at least one ingredient that you like to see. That uh, the more negative it is, the more it favors a chance for colder air to kind of lock into the eastern United States, relatively speaking, when I talk about colder air. Now, take a look at the Pacific North America Index. Now, the Pacific is the one place that I think we have to, there's some work that needs to be done here. But the Pacific North America Index, which is somewhat negative now, actually improves. Almost all the model members of the Pacific North America Index go to neutral by mid-month, and then they go positive. Now we want you want a positive Pacific North America Index because that talks about that favors a ridge in the western part of the United States, which favors a trough in the eastern part of the United States, which is what you really want. That's the part of the equation that's most important. And the other thing to look at, Joe, is the Arctic oscillation. And this really struck me when I saw this. The Arctic oscillation also went negative around the first of the month, and this is telling us that we have higher than normal pressures in the Arctic in general, and that is technically supposed to replace suppress cold air southward. The Arctic oscillation, some of the members go off the wall negative here, and the stronger the negative signal, the more favorable it is for something to set up in the eastern part of the United States with regards to with regards to snow, or at least to have some cold air around when you have a storm coming. So the Arctic oscillation, impressive. The one index that I still can't find anymore because of the changes that were made on the NOAA's ESRL website. They got rid of that 4-panel graphic, which was just so easy to have it all in one place.
Yeah, in fact, one of the folks on the chat board is complaining about that, getting rid of the bar graphs, so to
Yes,
speak.
the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, is for me. I have said this many times. That indice is the one that I pay the most attention to, and you want the EPO to be as negative as possible, because when the EPO is negative, that spreads cold air out across Canada and into the United States. Unfortunately, I can only kind of eyeball it from the standpoint of where the ridges and troughs are as to what the EPO is doing. I think it's in a positive position right now, but it looks like to me that it trends toward neutral, maybe even goes slightly negative toward the end of the forecast period. But if anybody from NOAA that's listening to me, bring back that chart, please. Okay, and if anyone, I've been searching all over Google trying to find something with regards to that, and I haven't yet found it. I did want to bring something up that I did find, and this was from the University of Wisconsin with regards to the EPO. So I'll show you folks. It was a pretty good chart here with respect to uh, what what the upper air tends to look like when you have a positive East Pacific oscillation. And that really is when you have a pretty fast Pacific jet, lower pressures in the northern part of the Pacific and higher pressures to the south, and that tends to flood the U.S. with warm air. Now we don't really have this at full blast. Okay, this is this is what we had for a good chunk of the last couple of winters. We don't have this at full blast right now, and when it goes negative, we'll take a look at the chart here. When it goes negative, this is what the upper air looks like. You start to get a ridge that tries to build up the the in the west, but especially along the Canadian Northwest and just offshore into the Pacific, because that helps to drive troughing down into eastern Canada and brings cold air. As on the lower right, you see how the reflection is in terms of temperatures. Now, this is a generality. When I looked at the ensembles, it's right now it's not really like the first one, okay, and down the road it's not really full blast like the second one, but it does starting to look a little bit more like the second one than it does the first, and I think that's the one place I think we need to correct in order to get some of the very cold, bitter air that's up in Canada, to bring that further to the south, or at least bring it down into Canada, so that there's some cold air nearby. So those pieces of the puzzle to me are coming along. The other thing, Joe, I just pulled up the latest ensembles, and one thing that stands out through the entire period. I'll start back from a couple of days ago, and you'll see, we had our storm this weekend. Of course, that was the that pulled out. I'm sorry, let me just roll that again. So that the storm was sitting up at this point on Sunday. We had the storm that formed off the Carolinas yesterday that moved out to the Northeast and didn't really bother anybody. But look on the upper right, watch what happens over time. You get higher than normal pressures that continue to build and build up in the Atlantic. And the other thing to pay attention to, Mr. Rayo, is this low that forms. It's on the operational models too. That forms out in the ocean. That's going to get locked away near the Azores, and then you wind up with a ridge that builds up along 40, 45 degrees west and just sits there pretty much for about 9 or 10 days. In fact, if anything, it kind of gets stronger through the period, especially up around Greenland and up in the Arctic region. And while that's all going on, notice you start to get ridging up in the Pacific Northwest and in Western Canada. Troughing in the eastern part of the United States gradually evolves. This is not a half bad look here. This is actually right on Christmas Day, at the end of the period. But you do set up with a trough at 160, a little bit of ridging at 120, trough at 80, another ridge out at about 40 or 45. So the ensembles the last few days have been kind of hinting at this. So again, I'm mildly encouraged. Every day that goes by that we see this, I think uh, gives a little bit more encouragement to folks that are looking for that window of opportunity.
So you're saying that that storm that's all the way out near the Azores is going to kind of back up traffic, so to speak, and allow for ridging and perhaps a configuration of troughiness along the eastern seaboard, and also slower movement as well, I guess, right?
Right. Take a look here. I just to bring up the latest GFS model run. The Azores low. There's seems like one after another is going out there. This, by the way, is a distinct difference from the last couple of years. If you think back, Joe, how many times we talked about the fact that there was minimal traffic out in the Atlantic, very few storms out there. It was
Right.
almost like a ruler. Well, if you look here on the upper right, low after low goes to the Azores, and this one here in particular, late in the forecast period, just kind of gets locked in there. And as a result, you've got this ridge, this upper ridge that develops. I just left what I drew on the ensembles over the operational. The operational, there are some differences clearly. There's a trough approaching the west coast here, but you also have a fairly nice looking trough here in the east. You got that ridge out in the Atlantic. So if we could get the Pacific to kind of get its act together, I think we're going to have some opportunities here.
Well, I see a number of people on the chat board all saying the same thing, basically. Let's have this happen right around Christmas because I think a lot of people would like to see at least a white Christmas for 2020. It would be a nice way to, finish out what has been really an atrocious year.
Oh yeah.
But we'll see.
Now I want to address today's Canadian model, which is not something I normally do, but I thought it was worth definitely looking at. because I want you to take a look at this. Now, I listen. the, the chances of the Canadian pulling this off, I think right now, when you look at all three models today, the European, the GFS, the Canadian, and if you want to throw in the Icon, they all seem to have different ideas of what happens after this weekend. Again, multiple streams, multiple short waves, timing issues. We're going to see timing issues from run to run, and that's going to change every run going forward for the next several days until it finally can settle on whatever is going to happen. You'll notice on the Canadian going into next week, what's pretty interesting to me is right here. Okay, you've got this is next Wednesday, Joe. There's a 50-50 low. Okay, you've got a blocking high sitting, from Greenland all across the Arctic. Here's your 50-50-ish low, and
Yep.
here's a nice looking trough, right? Running from Hudson Bay down into Texas. Now, I'm not going to say this is going to verify. This is a timing issue with these models. Obviously, the Canadian is keying on something different than the other models are, but I thought it was pretty interesting that it came up with this possibility, because then it shoots out a really vigorous southern stream system up the coast late next week. And it actually had mostly snow and ice for much of the I-95 corridor, which I thought was pretty. It was kind of a surprise. It probably has hardly any chance of happening, but nonetheless, it's there. And then at the end of the period, it's got it again, another 50-50 low right here. 50-50 low. I left what I just drew before. There's no trough in the east yet, but there will be, because you've got energy coming in and moving across from the west. So, that's one of the many possibilities that could happen as far as timing. I just thought it was an interesting outcome. And if you didn't see the surface, I'll show it. I'll show it to you real quick, because this is what it wound up with. And hang on, because now we're at 240 hours. But let's move back. But take a look at this. Take a look at this surface. It was just. You couldn't draw it better. This is next Wednesday, so it's a week from today. A low south of the Florida Panhandle, a 1040-ish high in eastern Canada that heads up into Quebec, Labrador, and stays there. And then all of a sudden, you've got this deepening low that moves up the coast, and voila, somebody gets clobbered from Virginia on up into New England.
The classic textbook situation.
Right.
The classic storm out of the Gulf of Mexico with the cold high covering the northeastern United States.
Correct. And again, that's due to the fact that the Canadians doing that thing with the 50-50 low.
Right.
The GFS, on the other hand, says no, that's not the case. This is our system for Saturday into Sunday, and that moves on out to the northeast, and we get our cold front to move on through, and hopefully everything's out of the way for the Geminids. Monday night, some sort of low forms off the Carolinas and goes out. That was something the European made a snowstorm out of on the overnight run. I don't know if you saw that. And then later on in the week, it really doesn't. It kind of minors out the southern shortwave and waits for another one late next week. And it sort of does the same thing that the Canadian does with the low track, except there's no high. And you've got a monster low that the GFS makes and moves up the coast. It sort of looks like what we went through last weekend to a large extent, an almost repeat performance, because there's a northern shortwave here that is coming down. And again, the GFS times it differently, and the outcome right in here. There's a cold front with cold air, LD. There you go. And you get the phase a little bit too late. That saves northern New England with heavy snow on the GFS's point of view. But again, the overall takeaway of this is that everyone's going to be timing things out differently, and I think it's just going to be fun to watch over the next week to 10 days to see how this all plays out.
I don't know, the ensemble on the GFS, I'm looking at the one from 18Z, seems to be building on they have a front coming through, during late Sunday and Sunday night. Then the storm, it suddenly it seems like there's some kind of an intense storm system located somewhere just to the east of the Gulf of Maine
Hmm.
by afternoon on Monday.
Well, now take a look at the icon today. I mean, if we're going to look at every model, we might as well. See, now the icon goes back to that idea that the European had overnight, where where it stalled this front out. Excuse me, stalled the front out for Sunday. This is Sunday's front that actually comes through sooner and weaker. And then you get another wave that develops there off South Carolina that by Monday afternoon is off the North Carolina coast. And we've got a cold high pulling in from the north. The prior run, Joe, on the 12Z, because it goes out an extra 60 hours, so whereas the in between only goes out to 120, it was much flatter and much flatter looking and took a low straight to the east. So I wonder whether that's still something might come out of that. But you know what? It's important. Maybe if something does develop there, that's may ultimately wind up feeding into what's going to be the 50-50 low that the Canadian has. I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to wind up.
Well, the last several days, I'm going to have to get a drink. Continue, Joe.
Oh, okay. Go get you go. Are you going upstairs to get it?
No, no, I've got it right here, but I don't know how long I'm. The last several days, all the models in one way, shape, or form have been using this front that's supposed to come through during the weekend, and have either been telegraphing something, developing on it and coming up north for early next week, or pushing it out to sea, and they keep going back and forth and back and forth. The bottom line is they're all trying to make something out of this,
Yeah.
but they just haven't been able to figure it all out yet. I figure, that tomorrow night, not tomorrow afternoon's run, but tomorrow night we'll be within about 3.5 days. There'll be a lot more data sets on going into the computers to work this out. And I think that tomorrow night, especially Friday, we'll be seeing, you know, everything coming into focus with what the
Right.
heck is going to be going on
And,
here.
and and by the way, the icon toward the end of the period has this low. It has a low moving across the northern Ohio Valley that suddenly redevelops off the Delaware coast, and this is Wednesday evening. So it's a little bit of a different idea than the Canadian, where it's got the thing all the way down to the south and makes the turn up the coast. But it has a similar idea with a high building up in eastern Canada and some colder air pinning down the coast. Although the Canadian is much more impressive with the cold high. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the models are just going to continue to do this uh, topsy turvy. Which shortwave are we going? Is it going to focus on now for the next few days until we can get closer and the data sets that it has to digest can point it toward a more interesting solution, a more viable solution to everything. By the way, I just want to thank Scott Briller, who hit Super Chat for a second time today, which we really appreciated very much, Scott. Thank you very much.
By the
And
way,
56 likes so far. Thanks for those of you who hit the like button. If you haven't hit the like button and you want to, go ahead and hit the like button. We appreciate it.
that system that is supposed to move in, let's say around the 18th and the 19th, according to the Canadian. I don't know if you've got to look at the projected snowfall, assuming a 10-to-1
Yeah, I
liquid
saw
ratio.
that. I'm not going to bring it up because
Oh,
that's, if you saw last night's European, which pretty much gave 6 to 12 or more for everybody from western North Carolina up to the Delmarva Peninsula, and then right up the coast up into northern New England. And of course, on the very next run, not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. Yeah, and the European, by the way, just to be fair, let's not let's also look at the model that really didn't show anything. I will tell you though, the European is no great shakes with what it's been doing. Having a wrapped up animal cutoff low yesterday and last night, moving through the southern states early next
right.
week, and now it's got nothing. So you can't sit here and tell me that this model is the end all where it's having the same problems that all the other models are having, which is dealing with these multiple streams of energy that are moving along, and whether do they phase, and the Europeans got a different view, because the European sort of has this gentle phase in the middle of the country for later next week, which winds up for us probably being nothing more than another cold front. And then it doesn't really do anything. It's just a little more progressive. So its idea is that um, things move along on this run anyway,
On the
and with not much. And it doesn't even have what the GFS has, which is that storm late next week coming out of the Gulf states, and then next weekend moving up the eastern seaboard. So again, they're all over the place.
I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly on the chat board. Alatse Baloye. Have you seen that name?
Oh, that's Zim. Is that That's Zim. You can call her Zim.
Okay. Well, she says, "Hey, it may change back tomorrow," and I agree with her on that.
Yeah. No,
The way
well,
things have been going, it's been going back and forth, back and forth. So maybe tomorrow, Joe, the European will have that closed system back over the Carolinas again.
going back to the generalities from what I said on at the beginning of the show, though, is again, in terms of the overall very broad picture. Uh, I think winter weather lovers can be cautiously, let's say, cautiously encouraged, and I'm thinking if we play our cards right with some timing issues, that we may get a shot at something between now and the end of the month. That's probably the best you could really say with regards to all of this.
Well, we'll see. We shall see.
I
The
mean,
one thing I've always wished for, and has
yes.
not happened in my entire life, and I always wanted to see what would happen if it did happen, was a major all-out, kind of like a Boxing Day snowstorm, but happening on New Year's Eve, and seeing whether or not anybody shows up to ring in the new year at Times Square.
Well, nobody's going to show up this year. They're not doing it there.
Are they? They're
I
not.
mean, I don't think I don't. They're not going to have crowds there for New Year's Eve. I doubt that they will.
Really? You think that no one's going to just go ignore that and just what you know what they ought to do? If that be the case, they should just do what we did during World War II and just simply say we ain't doing it this year. I think like 1942 or 43, they didn't have any ball drop. So they say, we can't allow large crowds at Times Square to congregate 300,000 and 400,000 people. So we're just not going to do it this year. And
Hey,
if you don't do it,
they canceled the Ohio State Michigan game. I think that's like the first time ever in 100 years.
yeah.
So
But I've always wanted to see a gigantic snowstorm on New Year's Eve, just to see. Of course, now he's not here with us anymore. Dick Clark, or even earlier back, Ben Grauer with NBC TV. Say, well, it's 44. The snow's coming down, and we've got 3 people out there waiting for the ball to drop. That kind of thing.
uh,
We've had many Christmas Eves and Christmas days, and even days after Christmas with heavy duty storms. For whatever reason, New Year's Eve, we've never had a massive, big snowfall. I remember it was about maybe 20 years ago on December 30th. It was a Saturday, and we
right.
had a massive snowstorm, like 12 or 13 inches. And I said, darn it, why couldn't it happen tomorrow? But it has never happened on at
Or
least.
even just a nice gentle snowfall of several inches while it's all going on. Steve Lapointe points out that indeed the New Year's Eve celebration in Times Square has been canceled. So we'll have to just imagine it, Joe. Maybe this year there will be one, and there won't be anybody there anyway.
That would be the irony. Wouldn't that be something if
That
they
would
didn't have?
that would certainly be ironic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And what a
mean,
way to finish out 2020. Wow.
by the way, did you get us any snow showers? I don't know if I asked you this earlier. Did I?
Oh yeah, we had snow
Oh, you
showers.
did. We did talk about this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the last of those clouds are still here, but they're going to be pulling out soon. And if you notice across the United States, I mean, it's quiet everywhere. So, for you snow lovers and you winter weather lovers, uh, your suffering isn't just you. It's pretty much nationwide. It's just very quiet. There's no big storms anywhere. We mentioned yesterday how the snow cover in the U.S. is at a minimum right now. It's at about 11%. and it's the lowest that it's been in the last 20 years. So it's not. I think it's always worse for snow lovers when one part of the country is getting hit with storm after storm after storm, and you know, and we're not getting anything. So everybody in the winter weather loving land is in the U.S. is in a bit of a drought. And for those of you who don't like winter weather, this is kind of like this is what you would hope would be the case, the weather for the next 3.5 months. So enjoy it while it lasts. And on the radar tonight, we could take a look at the Northeast. The last of the snow showers are just about gone. There's a little bit of snow shower activity moving off the Maine coast and off of Massachusetts. Otherwise, except for a little bit of light snow along the North Dakota Canadian border and the Minnesota Canadian border, back up in northern Montana, that's it. There's nothing going on. It's just absolutely quiet. Not even there's no rain anywhere either. I mean, it's just an almost it's an almost absolutely silent radar. All the radar operators in the National Weather Service got their feet up tonight, except
Yeah,
for the odd one or two.
yeah, it's been quiet, and we had a relative. It was the last year. We kicked off with a fairly large snowstorm. Even New York City had snow on the 1st of December, and then I'm not even going to dwell on what happened after that. We got our cheap thrill in May
Right.
with
Then the pattern flipped. The polar vortex in the stratosphere just locked all the cold air up away in the Arctic for 3 months, except for the odd intrusion.
the executive producer just sent me didn't send me, she just alerted me over the intercom that somebody is asking about the Northern Lights, and the time that seems to be best for viewing, or the time that is anticipated to be the best shot of our seeing any in the latitude of New York, the New York metropolitan area, would be sometime between about 10 o'clock and midnight tomorrow night. And I've known many times when it looked like, oh goodness, we're going to have a display of the Northern Light, and nothing happened. And there have been other times where, I wake up the next morning and surprise, guess what happened last night? This is one facet of physical science that really we have not been able to pin down precisely. We can make the assumption that because there was a flare on the sun a few days ago, that it's heading right toward us, and that we're going to see a significant display. That could happen, but other times the time is such that it happens after the sun comes up or before the sun comes up, and you never know. The best thing to do is just frequently check the sky tomorrow night, especially over toward the north, and maybe you'll be lucky. Um, but at least one thing I think you and I can agree on, Joe. Tomorrow night, at least it will be clear. So
Yes,
if,
that
if
and that'll be a big plus.
so that's always a big plus. If you're looking for these things, look. And the fact also is we don't have a moon. The moon, sometimes these things happen, and there's like a full moon in the sky, and you say, "Oh darn it! If the moon is not there, it would be even more spectacular." But no moon, clear skies tomorrow night. Projection is that we'll get into the zone of this coronal mass ejection around the middle of the night tomorrow night. So what can I say? Go out, and if nature's in a show off mood, you might see something like this. We'll see.
All right. All right. So let's just finish up the maps tonight. WPC over the next 7 days. The rains off the New England coast, they've actually shown diminished from what they had yesterday. You're seeing rain totals of about half an inch to an inch across the Gulf states and parts of the southeast, up the Mississippi Valley, and then northeast into the Great Lakes and up the St. Lawrence Valley. The west getting clobbered from northern California northward up through Oregon and Washington, and a little bit further north into southwest Canada. Some areas getting 3 to 5 inches or more in the next week, so some pretty solid rainfalls there, actually from central California on northward. Also, rain and in mountains, snow in the southwest, and also extending up into the Colorado Rockies, and then points northward up into the northern Rockies. So some of that lacking snow cover will pick up a bit. WPC on their probability, I've got the probability here of at least 2 inches over the next 72 hours, covering a fairly large portion of the west, in Colorado in particular, and a stripe running from North Kansas, southern Nebraska, northeast to Wisconsin and northern Michigan. So that's not too shabby from the standpoint of some snow, considering how inactive the pattern is at the moment. And we'll take a look at the surface map again on the GFS just to run you through what to expect over the next couple of days until we can get into next week, and then we'll figure out from there what may or may not happen down the road in the long range. But I'll just roll it back. This 18Z GFS and even the 12Z to an extent wrapped up an animal there next weekend, but a long way to go to see whether that's real or not. But we do know that the weather's pretty easy at the moment until this cold front approaches. You can see low pressure coming out from New Mexico and Texas on Friday, runs up towards St. Louis, and then heads to Chicago with that stripe of snow to the north. We get a little bit of rain here Saturday night into Sunday morning before it pulls out, and it looks like weather conditions will improve for the Geminids. Sunday night into Monday does turn colder for the start of next week, and then we sit back and wait and see where weather models will be taking us in the coming days.
Yes, indeed, indeed. I think once we, as far as the weekend and to the start of next week, I think once we get within range of tomorrow night's run and Friday afternoon's run, I think everything will come more into focus because again, by that time, the things that will be pieced or come together for the time frame that we're interested in, we'll be seeing a lot more data sets going into the computer runs and. That usually helps out and helps to clarify a lot of things. And this pattern, which we've had the last several days, as we've been saying, it's been in and out, up and down, or whatever. Hopefully, we'll be able to have a more definitive look at what's going to be happening for later in the weekend or early next week in the next couple of days.
Okay, so it's Briller Jeopardy time.
Yes.
And tonight's category, Mr. Rayo, is for Les Brilleurs Jeopardy. Okay. I thought I'd do.
Are you going to do it in French?
Well, no, Scott. Le plume de la Brioski. No, Scott wrote Les Brilleurs Jeopardy.
Okay.
So we can call it that too. Okay, so the category tonight, Mr. Rayo, is 24-hour state official snow records. So in other words, the greatest snowfalls, 24-hour snowfalls for the following states, and you have, in general, a wingspan of 8 inches in order for you to. We give you a leeway of 8 inches. Okay.
All right.
Got it. All right. So we will begin with the People's Republic of the State of New Jersey.
Well, I would. Oh, the heaviest snow in the state of New Jersey.
24 hours.
This is I say is a trick question. I immediately would say it has to be with someplace up in Sussex County in the northwest.
Well, I'll just tell you, more than likely, these are probably numbers that are generated by some of the bigger stations, the regular reporting stations, as opposed to just odd observations on from particular snowstorms. But
I'm going to say, for example, for Atlantic City, I'll say for Atlantic City that it's like something like absurd, like 23 inches.
Okay, but for the whole state though, not just for. I mean, what's the biggest snowfall in the entire state?
Well, like I said, that's what I'll
24 hours.
I'll say 23 inches, and I'll say Atlantic City.
Okay, so you're going to exclude Newark out of this then?
I'll leave Newark out.
So you're saying that Newark's 24-hour snowfall record number is lower than Atlantic City's?
Oh dear me. Well,
I'm trying to help you.
Newark is in the same zone as New York City, and I know that the one day, the largest snow total in New York City is like 27.5.
Okay.
So, could Newark have possibly had more than that in one day or whatever? All right. Since you're leading me into that territory, I'll say for Newark something. What am I going to say? 30.2 inches for Newark.
Oh, good. Now you see, it made me feel any better. The much better. The number, and Janet Dunn got it right. It's 32 is the number for the People's Republic of the State of New Jersey.
They
And
actually had 32 inches.
32.
That was Newark.
I don't know if it was Newark. I'd have to check, but that's the number. If
But then
well,
again,
it also could have been. Excuse me. It also could have been a number from Trenton. It could have been a number from Wrightstown, Lakehurst, Mount
yeah,
Holly.
yeah.
Well, why not? The Boxing Day storm. They had up to 3 feet in some places with the Boxing Day storm in New
Wow,
Jersey.
wow.
By the way, Chuck Cardillo just hit super chat. Thank you so much, Chuck. Appreciate it greatly. So from the People's Republic of the State of New Jersey, let us now move on to the neighboring People's Republic, which is the People's Republic of the State of New York.
Okay,
So
this is good.
the largest 24-hour snowfall in the
Wow.
PRNY.
Well, I mean, my goodness, I think in terms of lake effect, dare I say, but was this a 24-hour total? That's the question. I know that one place had like in a single snowfall, but did that extend over? I find it difficult to believe it could be 24 hours. I know there was one place in New York that had like 77 inches, but I don't think that's a one-day
I
event.
again would probably keep it to the bigger stations in terms of the numbers,
All right. Well,
like a Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo,
yeah, I know.
Albany.
I know. I don't think Albany. I would probably say it's either Rochester or Buffalo. I don't know. I'd say 40, 43 inches for
Well, you're
Rochester,
within that 8-inch margin of error, Joe. 49 is the number.
and that was for.
He doesn't say which,
Oh,
where the location in either People's Republic.
all right.
Okay.
For the and for the 77 inches, there we go.
Okay. So now let us leave the People's Republics of the states of New York and New Jersey and head down to the free range state of Florida, the greatest 24-hour snowfall in the great state of Florida.
Well, then we have to think of either Tallahassee or Jacksonville,
Right.
and how much they could possibly. I'm going to say, I'll say Tallahassee or Jacksonville. I'll say Tallahassee. I'll say 6 inches. I'm going to go way out on a limb with that.
Well, it's not too far out on the limb. 4.
4.
4 inches for
Yeah.
the great state of Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's leave the great state of Florida and head to the beautiful state, our northernmost state, and that is the state of Maine.
Well, Maine. What? Ooh, maybe a coastal storm may have brought a lot to Augusta or Portland or whatever. How about and Newark had 32 inches, and Maine is. I'll say.
I'll give
A
you
nice round number.
a hint.
Yeah.
Okay, the number has already been used.
Well, I haven't been keeping check of which numbers I've used already. How about 40?
You just missed the 8-inch margin of error by an inch. 49.
40?
Also, which was
Wow.
the same for New York. 49.
Right.
Okay. Now, let us go to the state that I consider absolute paradise. And the reason why I think this state is absolute paradise is because any state that when you drive in has a sign that the first sign says welcome to, and then the second sign has an arrow on it pointing when the sign says state liquor store. You kind of want to go there, okay? And it's truly, I think New Hampshire is absolute paradise. So New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Well, let's see. Was it Manchester or Concord or how about 43 inches?
49.3
Again?
for the third
Again?
time.
Again?
Yes, again. Okay, now to the nation's 49th state. And that is the state of Alaska. The greatest 24-hour snowfall recorded in the state of Alaska.
We were talking about Alaska yesterday in one way,
Right,
shape, or
with
form.
Valdez,
Yes,
with the 300 and some odd inches a year that they get there.
right. And that having been said, now it's time to go for a really ridiculous number, which I will do right now. I'll say, remember when I was talking about how there was a place, lake effect, 77 inches in one day for New York?
Right.
I said that couldn't possibly be one day. Valdez, I'll say maybe not 77. How about 60, 61?
You know what? You might want to say 77.
You're kidding.
You might want to say it. So I think you say, I'll give you the opportunity to change your mind.
I'll say 77 then.
78.
78 inches
Right.
in one day.
Right.
That
In
reminds me
one
of that
day.
episode of that reminds me of the episode of I Love Lucy where they were stuck in the cabin.
Correct. Exactly. uh, so now from Alaska, let us go to the state where you drive in, you pay a toll, the sign says welcome. Then you drive a very short distance and you see a sign that says thank you for being in this state. Okay.
Connecticut.
No, no, it's even shorter than Connecticut. Delaware.
Delaware. And I
Delaware.
know what I'm referring to at 684. There's like a 1 mile stretch that curves into Connecticut
Right,
for
exactly. Well, that's kind of like 95 when it goes through Delaware.
I laugh every time
Welcome
I'm
to Delaware. You pay the $4 bridge toll. Then they got another toll like a few miles ahead, which is another $4 or $5. And then the next thing you know, you're in Maryland. So what was Delaware's biggest 24-hour snowfall?
oh dear. How about 28?
Well, pretty close. 25. 25 for
Yeah,
Delaware.
yeah.
Okay, now on to the West Coast, where they have several people's
How many,
republics,
by
like
the way, how many more do you have of these?
just 10 altogether.
It
It's
sounds
all
like
this
you've got
color,
10.
it's all this color commentary that I'm doing that's causing this.
Yeah.
That's stretching the time out. So uh, let us go now to the People's Republic of the State of California, where even after you leave the state, they want to tax you.
Yeah,
Uh,
but no, this is not fair because are we including the Sierra Nevadas, which
well, it's a 24-hour snowfall record for the state.
okay.
So it doesn't matter where it is, it's the number. The 24-hour state. It's probably going to be, I'm sure it's a mountain, a mountain reading,
How about
where they put up a winter storm warning up for a gas station. So go on.
how about
So California,
how about 48?
the state that has taxed the golden goose.
Yes.
67 for California.
67. You see? Not Alaska.
Right.
67 inches in California. All of that Pacific moisture being forced upslope along the line over. Ah.
I know. So now let us
Now you're going to ask me about Washington, where I have to deal with the Cascades,
no, no,
right?
no, 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 no. Now we're going to sashay eastward across the deserts of Arizona, the mountains of New Mexico, and then we find ourselves in the great state of Texas, where you could spend a lifetime just driving across I-10 in a straight line from Houston to El Paso. But go on, the
Well,
great state of Texas.
you know, they have what they call Texas northers when they have the cold front coming through from the north and the sky lit. They call it blue northers because you can see the cold air and the blue sky coming in with the cold air. And one time there was one place in Texas. It was like 90 something degrees one day, and the next day was like 11 degrees with blizzard conditions. So
Yes.
um, I will say, well, I'll say 24 inches. I
Oh,
don't think
very good. You just missed a perfect hit. Um,
I'm not getting the $500 out of your
no,
pocket.
you're not getting the five. Is that what they have in the pocket now? $500?
I think so.
Okay. No, 25 for Texas. Was
25
probably, I don't know what, Amarillo maybe, or
Amarillo or
somewhere there. Okay, and of course we'll finish off with the state where you should always, especially in the southern part of the state, you should always go to this place. to this state with an empty stomach, because the food in southeast in Louisiana, but particularly in southeast Louisiana, is to die for. Joe, it's the only place I have ever been where you could be standing at the bus stop at 7 o'clock in the morning to put your kids on the bus, and somebody will come out with a tray of glasses filled with Bloody Marys. Okay. It's also the only every recipe there starts with at least 2 sticks of butter. You want to pour yourself a bowl of cereal, you need 2 sticks of butter. That's just how things are there. But Louisiana.
Louisiana. Well, the only place I could see where the large cities where they could have a sizable
It'd be
snowfall,
Shreveport.
probably Shreveport. Yeah. So what possibly could make it all the way down? 13 inches.
Oh my God! Reach into that pocket, Mr. Rayo, and take out that $500.
Holy mackerel!
Then it's on to spin that wheel. Spin that wheel, get $1 and win $10,000 in a bonus spin. Is it still $10,000?
I think it's 10. I think it's 10,000. Yeah.
Right, and 5,000 for the green sections.
Right.
Unbelievable. Yeah, you hit that one on the nose.
Amazing.
Very good. You did good.
Amazing.
All right, so I think that kind of wraps up the show for tonight. So let's just remind everybody what's going on. So Friday night, you're going to be doing your. We'll do our weather, but Joe's going to do the first part of the show. Is going to be Joe doing his library, what he's been doing with his library presentations regarding the Geminids. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And
Tomorrow
with some weather.
and tomorrow night, you'll remind everybody about the Northern Lights potential.
Right. And I have some special news for you. I had somebody who approached me today, sent me an email, and said he would be most delighted. And I'm going to leave it up to you now to schedule this. He gave me 3 possible days: Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And it's your friend and mine too, Bill Corbell.
Oh, absolutely. Bill could come on all 3 days if he likes, if he wants to. Sure, absolutely.
And I mean, like, so we have had so many people who have kind of avoided trying to come here, but he actually came and said, "Here I am."
Yeah, no, we'd love to have Bill on the show. Are you kidding me? Sure, if he wants to do all 3 days, if we got to, if God willing, we have. Well, I shouldn't say this, but I mean, if we have some kind of snowstorm, threatening, we could have a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So we'll shoot for that. Whatever night works for him is fine. Any or all of them.
Yeah, I'll tell him. I said, you want to come on? If he's so popular and so many people like him, it might turn out to be the Joe and Bill.
No, then he'd have to change his name. He'd have to change. But that wouldn't be good work if he changed the B to a J. That wouldn't work.
No.
I mean, it would work for the J alliteration, but it certainly wouldn't work for him.
Well, I know good thing. 2 Joes and a Bill.
Okay, I can go for that.
Yeah.
But
whatever.
Well, you and us, it's the Joe and Joe show, so we have top billing.
Yes.
We'll
allow me to introduce myself.
Right, exactly.
No. All I want is top billing. Impossible. TV villains never get top billing. Oh.
Yes. Okay. So that'd be great. So we'll you lock him down on whatever day or days he wants to come on, and also tomorrow night for my weather my members on my weather platform on Patreon, which is patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board if you're interested. We are going to do our weekly weather Zoom with the members, and that'll be at probably around 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow after the Joe and Joe Weather Show is done. Okay,
hey,
so if you're interested, check out my weather platform on Patreon.
Janet Dunn says, bring Bill Goodman on, and then it could be the Joe and Bill show.
Well, we could try that. Let me see if I can reach out to Bill, to Mr. Goodman.
So we'll have 2 Bills and 2 Joes.
All right, then we'll have a 4-box.
Yeah.
All right, that'll work. So I'll reach out to Bill and we'll see if we can pull this off.
Maybe it's too bad he's not. It's too bad Paul Lind isn't alive. We can get him for the safe square.
Oh God, and Charlie Weaver.
And Charlie Weaver, yeah.
Correct. And Wally Cox.
Wally Con. There's no need to fear.
Underdog is
Dog is
here.
here.
Help!
All right.
Help! Help!
Say good night, Joe.
Oh, Omni True Value Hardware, folks. They are sponsors of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Omni True Value Hardware in West Babylon, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, just north of the Southern State Parkway, 631 756 1125. The website is omnitruevalue.com, and they have everything you need when it comes to supplies to get you through the winter storms of, well, of the upcoming winter. I
Whatever.
guess that's the best way to put it. All
What does
right,
latex dream? What does latex dreams mean? Rayo Hachiapi.
say again.
Latex Dreams wrote on the chat board, Rayo Hachiapi.
You hacked
I have
me?
no clue what that means.
I don't know either.
I'm not
We
even.
actually, I didn't tell. Well, we had some problems pre-show. There was a bunch of trolls on, so we had to clean things up a little
Oh,
bit. The
okay.
moderators on the board did a great job, by the way. I want to thank the show the show moderators, Scott Briller, Timothy Veltman, Johnny Quest, for cleaning up the act. It got a little crazy. All right, have
New
a
York Sack Exchange.
what's that?
I said that like the Jets used to have the New York Sack Exchange.
Correct.
They sacked all, they sacked all the wise guys.
David Schwartz, William Uber, Scott Briller twice, and Chuck Cardillo. Thank you very much for hitting Super Chat. 77 likes on this live stream tonight. Thanks for those of you who have hit the like button. And we will see you tomorrow night on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Good night, everybody.
Good night.